back to Chasing Goosebumps. It has been a longer break than anticipated between our first and second episode because I got sick, and you're going to hear that in my voice a little bit when we talk to our first guest, Jody Steinhauer. She is a powerhouse. She is always giving back to the community, and she impresses me so much. And I'm going to let her, we'll both explain how we met. But I will say that she is the founder of Bargains Group, and she is the founder of the social enterprise Kits for a Cause. And she's someone who impacts change. When she sees something that is wrong, she addresses it. And I just respect that so much. So I'm going to now let you listen to my conversation with Jody. Welcome, Jody, and thank you for being here today to talk to me. And I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you, Teresa.
So you are the founder of Bargains Group, Kits for a Cause. You have founded longstanding charities. You have been recently featured in Forbes magazine. You are a hockey mom extraordinaire. But before we get into all of that, I want to talk about how we met.
Absolutely. Do you want to
So,
start?
yeah,
I
I
think you
thought
should
I
tell
would
the
talk.
story.
Yeah, I'll tell you from my perspective, how we met, and then you can tell me from your perspective because we actually had two different perspectives in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So Jody and I were both speaking at WeBe Canada, Women's Business Enterprise Canada National Conference in November of 2025. It was the opening night during awards ceremony, and I was speaking first on stage, and it was challenging because
Say the
it
least.
was right. Yeah, very noisy. I was talking about how to make the most of your conference and networking. And suddenly, I'm kind of looking around thinking, do I continue? Do I stop and address the noise? Do I just plow through it? And suddenly I hear this person say, "Excuse me, can I interrupt you for a moment?" And that's where I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I want to enhance the what happened a little more. You were trying to talk about
Yes.
how to leverage a conference, which is a really important topic for most people, especially this crowd, because a lot of people don't know how to really take the opportunity of having 500 incredible entrepreneurs and business owners in the room and get out of it with maximum value. But the bar was going on,
Yes.
and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was on the other side of the room. I'm watching, and I literally was scoping the room out, and my blood pressure was boiling because I wanted to hear you selfishly, because I love these kinds of things. But I do this all the time. This room needed to hear you, and we couldn't even hear your voice on the microphone. And the organizers of this event were looking around and didn't know what to do.
Yes, I would say
Number
that was accurate.
one, shut the bar. Okay. So
Yes.
I was looking around trying to get their attention because I can't stand when people don't get the respect they deserve. And you were giving a phenomenal speech. You're a brilliant woman, and I wanted to hear it, and everybody needed. So I waited and I'm looking. And finally, I said, okay, this is up to me. No one else has a big mouth. So I just went over and I stood up. And I got to tell you, some people came up to me afterwards and said, thank you. I felt really bad for Teresa. I wanted to hear too, but I didn't have the balls to say something. And other people looked at me like, who the heck are you? But that's okay. I don't like those people. I like first group. And guess what? I would say we cut the noise down to half. I don't think it ended, which was really even more disrespectful. But I got to hear your message, and so did others. And more importantly, we connected because we recognized that we respected each other in that moment in time. That's what I felt.
Absolutely. And it was I guess we were both following our paths because you to me are a disruptor and you disrupted, right? You followed sort of your instinct to do that. And my when you told everyone to listen, of course I said, That's okay. They're just networking because I'm always placating everybody. And but we connected afterwards, and you spoke after
I
about
was
some
just
of the
saying that I
things.
had to speak afterwards. And I had these people looking at me going, "Who are you?"
Yeah. And did you know that the bar was going to be open that night, by the way?
No, I didn't know,
Oh,
but that's like
yeah.
101. You don't do that when you're having people speak on stage. You need to help the room focus, right? Because we're
Yeah.
all, looking at shiny objects, and alcohol is one of those.
Yeah, yeah, and there just so people understand, there were about 40 or 50 seats where people were ch sitting trying to listen, and there were
Sure.
people sort of standing around. But then there were other people trying to connect over by the bar. So that's how we met, which makes me laugh a little bit. And then we kept reconnecting through the rest of the conference. And your talk that I could hear, because I was standing very close to the speaker, was phenomenal. And I learned so much about you. And I don't even know where to start, but I figured we would start maybe way back at the beginning. I understand you got your start in fashion.
Yeah, I graduated in fashion merchandising, business and marketing, and I went to a private fashion school. I've lost all of that knowledge, and I loved the connection between kind of people feeling good when they
Hmm.
wore the right things and purchased the right things. So, I started off working for Dialects at Fairweather and had extensive training, but then I went to fashion school and I learned it from the other side. How do you buy product? I'm a connector like you. So how do
Hmm.
you buy product? And one of my famous stories was I won't name the name, but a celebrity came into the store, tried on some pants, and all the salespeople were like, woo, woo, woo. And I said to her, can I be honest? Your ass looks like this big. And from that point on, she would only come and deal with me because I was honest. And I say, that's my brand. I'm authentic.
Right,
Not everyone may like it, but they
right.
know they're going to hear the truth. I said it respectfully, but I said, I've got some other ones I think will make you look to this. I see you 30 years later. And she says, I'll always remember the first time I met you. And I think it's really important that our authentic self always comes out. So that's
Uh,
where my background was. I went to fashion school. I was in the fashion space. I sold to stores like Holt Renfrew and Wined
mhm.
and Dined buyers. And then I went to New York City and worked for Guess Jeans.
Amazing. So, what was the departure into? Because you went from there, I believe, into the bargains group, right? Completely,
I
almost,
worked, I
yeah.
worked, came back to Canada, and then I was disillusioned. My departure was the values of the fashion industry
Hmm.
and kind of, everything looks so glam and all of that. And my values as a person were absolutely unaligned. And it was really hard. I couldn't work in an industry that was so superficial and work for people that were talking out of both sides of the mouth. That just wasn't me. And I was craving authenticity and working for mentors who, I was really young. I was,
Hmm.
20 something when I graduated. So I actually took, back then when we looked for a job, we went into the paper and flipped the pages,
Right.
the want ads that tells you how old I am. And there was a job that said looking for a purchaser for a private school to buy school supplies and uniforms. I'm like, oh, I'm the best shopper around. I'm so cheap. I can do that. And I went to the headhunter. Back then, we went to headhunters' offices and we met with them. And he looked at my resume because I had done a lot of stuff, in a very short period
Hmm.
of time. And he's like, you want to buy pencils and back, are you kidding me? I have someone I want you to meet. And I actually got in his car, which I tell people you don't do that now. But I actually got in his car and he drove me to like North Toronto to this dilapidated warehouse to meet somebody who was in the absolute opposite end of fashion. It was low fashion. He ran stores that were like 9.99 for everything. And I got hired on the spot to run his wholesale division. And I started that Monday and I fell in love with the action and the passion about connecting manufacturers, buying goods, and going to retailers at very low cost. My first transaction was 100 dozen of underwear. And my father asked me my first day of work, how was work? I'm like, I sold 100 dozen underwear. You need to understand, when I sold pants to Holt Renfrew,
Right.
they would buy 6 pairs of pants for the entire country.
Oh my
Six
gosh.
pairs. So I sold 100 dozen. So my father said, that's unbelievable. Jody, how big was the sale? I'm like, you're not listening to me. It was 100 dozen underwear. And I kept going back. I said, okay, so the whole sale was only $600. It was $6 a dozen. And my father said, you have found your place.
Yes.
And that was my first sale was to Honest Ed's, Ed Mervish.
Oh my gosh, Honest Ed's, that's fascinating. And it's now knowing that story, everything aligns even more. Like the fact that you ended up there in that warehouse learning those skills has sort of springboarded you into the rest of the story. Because I want you to take us the story that I remember you telling. I want you to tell it, but we have a connection also or a parallel because I used to work I was in shelters and you were in shelters. So we
Right,
had that parallel as well as the hockey moms
right.
parallel.
Lucky
So
moms.
take us through the story that you told on stage that really connects the Bargains group with Kits for a Cause.
Okay, so I worked just to go back a bit. So I worked for this gentleman for
Hmm.
2, 3 years.
Hmm.
I literally ran his wholesale division, made him millions of dollars. Amazing. He made a bad business decision. I told him halfway through, why are you doing this? It's an ego decision. He said, no, no, no. And then he said, I made the wrong decision. You're right. I have to fold the company and go bankrupt.
Oh,
But I'm
wow.
opening you up next door because you make me all my money. And I just basically said, I'm happy to help you, but I'm going to put my name on the door. I am the business. So Bargains Group was founded based on I was doing the work anyways. And at the time, opening a business, people said, oh my gosh, I said, it was no big deal. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have
Right.
kids. What's
Right.
the big deal? If I did it for a couple months, I could go get a job. So I started buying and selling deals to discount stores. And my philosophy and mantra was I've got to be excited about every day that I wake up
Hmm.
and love what I'm doing. And I think, I still do. And that's
Hmm.
still my guiding force. But when retail changed, if everyone remembers when Walmart started to come in town and internet and website, things really changed. So I had a near-death experience with my first child, and then uh, I realized I needed a bit of sustainability in my business. I was only as good as my last deal. So somebody said, "Why don't you connect with prisons and correctional facilities? They always are going to need things." And I sold things like socks and underwear.
Right.
So I said, "That's a good market." So I started selling prisons and correctional facilities. But then I started to find out about some of the government, we'll just call them not so straight procurement people.
Right.
And I still sell them to this day, but I sell the civil servants who really care about the taxpayers' dollars and
Hmm.
the clients they serve.
Right.
So as I'm on that journey, I volunteered at a homeless shelter, which is the
Right.
story you're talking.
Yes.
And I was doing my shift. It was a youth shelter. And the two social workers said, Jody, can you watch the clothing room when we run out and do an errand? And I said, sure. What does that mean? And they said, just be nice to everybody, put a smile on your face, and give them whatever they want, but only give them one. I said, sure. Great. I got to go back to work. Then no problem. We'll be back. So they show back up 3 hours later. I'm like, where are these women? I have to go to work. I'm a volunteer. And they had an entire car filled with Zeller's bags. And for the other American listeners, that's Kmart basically.
Right.
And I was so excited. And they said, "Why are you so excited?" And I said, "Because Zeller's is a client of mine and they're not nice. They're a huge client of mine. They don't pay their bills. They're rude to my people. They're very demanding. We all have clients like that." And they said, okay, so why are you excited? I said, well, look, they just gave you all of this stuff. It's amazing. And they said to me, Jody, we just spent $10,000 at Zeller's. So
Oh my
keep in
gosh.
mind, this is 28, 29 years ago.
Right.
I said, are you kidding me? I want to see what's in those bags. But I got angry because I'm also a donor to
Hmm.
these people.
Hmm.
And I said, I will never donate another dollar if you're shopping retail with my money. And
Right.
they looked at me and said, well, how would I do it? I said, do you not know what I do when I'm not volunteering? I own the Bargains Group and I sell stuff at 80% off. So open those bags up. I want to see what's in them. And then I wanted to vomit because
Hmm.
everything in those bags came from the Bargains Group. Underwear, long johns, winter gloves, tampons, and shampoo. That's what they bought.
Right.
I eyeballed it because that's what I do. It would have cost about $2,500 if they called the Bargains Group.
Hmm.
instead of $10,000. And for a fundraiser at a charity, that's a tremendous. And remember, this is 20 something years ago. So that same 10 grand was probably equivalent to about $100,000 now. So that was that moment that I found, my passion. And I said, how often do you go out and buy things? Don't you get everything donated? Because most
Hmm.
people think charities get everything donated. And they said, well, we have to buy gaps. We have to buy things we don't get donated. And I said, don't ever go to a retail store ever again. And please tell every charity you know they can call me. I will, in a 5-minute phone call instead of 6 hours of a social worker's time, you'll get this stuff at probably about 75% less. I'm happy to donate product to you also. I've got stuff that I'll donate to you, and I'll give you terms and you'll pay me in 30 days
Right.
and you'll get it delivered to you.
Right.
So they looked at me and they actually asked me if the goods were stolen. I'm like, no, that's what my company does. So that was my point, and it turned. And then what started happening, it was a snowball effect. They started calling me. And 3 months later, they told me from the savings of just 3 months, they were able to hire another housing worker,
Oh, that's
right?
amazing.
And they started telling people and telling people. And then we just started getting calls coast to coast. And then my staff rebelled and said, we don't want to deal with retailers. These people are the most wonderful people. They respect us. They return our calls. They pay their bills. They're lovely. And I said, that's great, but they don't usually have any money. So we
Right.
have to make sure we can help both people. So we literally re-engineered every process in our company, our warehouse, the case size, everything so that we could serve charities, not for profits, and donors who wanted to help charities. So if you ever want to buy a case of socks for a homeless shelter, please never shop retail. Call us.
Right.
If you're a retail store now, winners would say to me, why are we buying socks in 72s? We want them to go, 300. I'm like, well, then you're going to have to buy 4 boxes of 288 and we'll ship you those to one location. This is the way we do it now. And
Right.
that's how we kind of got into that sector. And the problem, that sector is so needy. It's never been more needy now. And it just
Yeah.
gives me such gratification. My family's like, could you turn your computer off? I can't because if I miss an email or two, especially in cold weather, it's a day later that I won't be able to help somebody, right?
Right. Yeah. And there is, I'm going to direct people to the Forbes article as well. I'll put
Oh,
it in
thank
the
you.
link because it's really fascinating. Congratulations on that.
Thank
But
you.
it talked about a cold night and
Yeah.
something that happened that also transformed your work. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm helping charities, as you know, it's been a couple years, as I just mentioned to you.
Hmm.
And then something happened, and it was literally a night like we're having right
Hmm.
now. Temperature went sub-zero in Toronto, and a man froze to death in a bus shelter right outside of the Eden Center, which is the like little most popular intersection in Toronto at Yonge and
Hmm.
Dundas. And it made front page news. And I'm even when I tell this story now, people remember it was 28
Hmm.
years ago, 27,
Hmm.
28 years ago.
Hmm.
And I literally called all I call them my new friends, all of the shelters and homelessness back then was downtown urban problem in every
Right.
city. It
Hmm.
hadn't sprawled into the suburbs yet. And I said, why did this guy die? How can we prevent this? And they said, Jody, if he had a sleeping bag, he'd be alive today. And I said, are you kidding me? A
Hmm.
sleeping bag could save lives. I can do that. And literally that's what happened. So I talked to every one of the 10 shelters very quickly, said, what do you need so that nobody dies in the next 3 months, and
Hmm.
quantify the data for me? How many men, how many women? And they gave me a list. I put it together and I reached out to 20 business leaders who were altruistic. Teresa, if I knew you then, I would have reached out to you. And I would have said, you got to hear what just happened. Are you open to coming to my warehouse on Saturday for 2, 3 hours and making sure nobody dies for the rest of the winter? What
Hmm.
would you say if I called you and said that?
I'd say, of course. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I know lots of people like you, thank God. They
Hmm.
all came, but I'm really big on education. So we all showed up and I invited an outreach worker, somebody worked in a drop-in, a sex trafficking worker, a harm reduction worker, someone who is unhoused. We refer to people now as unhoused, not
Hmm.
homeless.
Mm-hmm.
and someone who had gotten out of the cycles of poverty and actually got housed. And I brought
Mm-hmm.
them together and I said, you got 15 or 20 minutes. These are a bunch of, type A business people who have no attention span. I want you to tell them raw what is really going on in our city and how bad is it. And no one's going to see this. You don't have to worry about being fired, but they need to hear it because they are people who can make change.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. We had all the components on the table. We all pitched in a couple $100. We had the conversation. There was tears, there was hugs. We packed the kits and we invited the charities. We loaded up their vehicles and all these business people stood around. The entire event was an hour and 37 minutes. And every one of them said that experience was transformational. I
Absolutely.
will never, ever do another stair climb, build a bike, golf tournament, gala, paint a wall, beans in a box. You can probably add a couple to that list. I want all my employees doing this. And can
Mm-hmm.
I bring my family? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this was not just Jody's love project. I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant at the time. I said, I guess we're going to do this again. And that project became something we called it Project Winter Survival.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became a registered charity, Engage in Change, not because we needed a charity, because the donors loved it and they said, we want to build more kits. Can we get a tax receipt if we donate more money? So that's the only reason. And I will proudly say we just finished our 27th annual event. Sadly, our largest ever. We are a 100% grassroots charity with no employees. It's myself, my wonderful board members, my husband, my kids, my employees. And we gave out last week approximately at retail $1 million of survival kits to 207 charities, outreach, and drop-ins throughout Toronto and Ontario. But we were only able to give out maybe 15-20% of the need that was actually asked for, which
Wow.
good, but it's terrifying to know. And as we go into this weather, I'm terrified and pray to God that nobody dies this weekend as the
Yeah.
temp plummet to minus 35.
Yeah. It's going to be very cold. What would be, just so people can picture, I've seen your kits. What would be in one of the kits that goes out?
Most importantly, a sleeping bag. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
just a sleeping bag, it's a special sleeping bag with a stuff sack and straps because people are transient when they're
Mm-hmm.
unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
And these sleeping bags, you can imagine, are like gold. So people
Mm-hmm.
want to pull them on their body if they're sleeping or there. The backpack with multiple pockets, obviously. And just imagine if you stepped outside, what would you need? A warm toque, warm gloves, not magic gloves, warm gloves,
Mm-hmm.
socks, not sports socks, thermal thick socks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about all of the other hygiene products, a Ziploc bag to protect all the hygiene products so they don't leak over your belongings. So think about chapstick, Kleenex,
Mm-hmm.
face lotion, hand lotion,
Mm-hmm.
shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, a toothbrush, toothpaste. We're talking basic necessities, a face cloth, because you can't get any of these things at shelters in most shelters because they're just so looking for help. And think about the hygiene when you go to a hotel now.
Right.
Everything's, on the
It's on the
wall.
wall. Yeah.
You don't have the little things that you can take and donate. So, hygiene need
Yeah.
is 10 times it ever was. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. And then things that people don't think about, a stress ball for circulation,
Mm.
uh, a puzzle book like a Sudoku or a crossword or a word search with a pen to stimulate the mind, and a
Mm-hmm.
deck of cards to stimulate interaction with other humans, a pad of paper and a pen to write down, and then food snacks, a kind bar, nutrition,
Yep.
made good nutrition with some sugar,
Mm-hmm.
and then a reusable stainless steel coffee mug because there are outreach vans that may go around, but they can't even, some of them have cups
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Have,
And some
yeah.
hot chocolate or tea and some hand sanitizer. We used to put masks in that during COVID. Now we've added back the sanitizer because everyone's sick.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and sanitizer wipes too to be able to wipe down things. So I think
Yeah.
I've got pretty much, and a bottle of water, pretty much everything. But as you see, there's nothing there that isn't absolutely necessary. And we believe in the models of collaboration. So it's the outreach workers in the shelters that tell us what should be in that kit. The only thing we
Right.
didn't put it in this year which we need. We just didn't have as a flashlight. That's the only
Right.
other thing that we need to add. And hand warmers and foot warmers. I forgot to add those.
Yeah, that's so impressive. And how many did you say you were able to or were
We,
created?
yeah, we did just over 3,500 kits.
Wow.
And if you're interested, check out the website or
Hmm.
like it's a well-oiled machine. They're built in under 2 hours by all the
Wow.
volunteers that come out, and we're partners with everybody, the media, the police, everybody comes together. And then these volunteers volunteer their Saturday. They pay to be part of this event, and then they go outside in frigid temperatures, and we have to load up all the vehicles because we have
Yeah.
to get them into the cars. So it's quite a well-oiled machine. And then I also go out from the education. I go out on the streets with the media,
Hmm.
and it's a lot different than it was 20 years ago. I have to go out and have people around me because we get swarmed. My van gets absolutely swarmed. And we
Ah,
give out and we see, some of the same people who are, chronically homeless, and they're so
yeah.
excited, and they just literally jump us. We have to lock the van and have people guarding because they'll just open up everything because they're that much in need.
Hmm.
And lastly, we always invite a couple people. We work with a wonderful man, Andre, who's heads up the Christy Ossington charity.
Hmm.
And he always helps me find people who will tell their story because being unhoused is you and me with bad luck, very different
Right.
than a lot of people think. So this year, we had a wonderful man named Joseph, and he told his story. He was like you or me. He
Yeah.
lost his job. He became unhoused. He had a condo. He lost his condo. He was living in his car. And
Hmm.
then recently he was able to get into a shelter, which was hard enough. He works full time as a mailman for Canada Post. So this is not a man who's not working. He works full time and he lives in a shelter.
Right.
And we got him talking at the press conference, and the media interviewed him. And within 24 hours, we had three different people who knew him they worked with him, they went to
Oh,
school.
amazing.
They offered him a place to live.
Oh my gosh, that's
So,
amazing.
you
Yeah.
know, Teresa, you're like me. We're connectors. We had
Yeah.
another woman who was homeless and she moved here from Calgary and was Indigenous background, and just her story was just heartbreaking. But she wanted to tell it. She was married with her husband, homeless in the shelter.
Wow.
So these are the important to me stories. My job isn't just to give out kits, it's to
Just to let
educate
people
people,
know.
to have empathy, and especially the young people because they're too busy maybe playing hockey,
Yeah.
and to really understand that nobody chooses to be homeless.
Well, and I think that was part of the story that I was telling the night we met was how my trajectory changed when I was in the shelter interviewing someone for part of a research and hearing that person's story. It was a young man 2 weeks younger than me. And I was sort of like, how did you get there and how did I get here? I'm not going to go into sports psychology. I'm going to try to understand what helps people thrive in communities. And that's how I ended up like that was my journey into where we are. You mentioned about young people getting involved, and I think part of what you do, or part of the reason I think what you do is so impressive, is that you give people a way to be connected through Kits for a Cause, whether it's teams or charities or community groups, whatever it is. So
Or hockey
maybe,
teams.
and hockey teams, yes, and hockey teams. Maybe talk a little bit about that because I
Yeah.
think that's really fascinating.
So Kids for Cause has been, sorry, Engage and Change has been doing this for,
Hmm.
27 years.
Right.
And I was just kind of 2 decades earlier
Hmm.
than most of companies. A lot of business people thought I was crazy and said, "Why do you spend so much time, money, and resources doing this? Go make more money." But I was brought up that, you know what, if you have, you give back. It's part of, we're only as strong as the weakest link in our community. And then around, 8, 9, 10 years ago, businesses really started to change. They actually started taking corporate social
Hmm.
responsibility and giving back and things like that serious. And they started putting serious means they put it as a budget item, right?
Right.
They put a line item, they investigate, they started going to conferences. How do we do all these words, impact, CSR, employee engagement, B Corps, all of these things came
Hmm.
to be talked about, and all of these people got empowered, and then they left these conferences, called up that local charity and said, "Hey, Teresa, it's KPMG. I've got 300 people and we want to come and volunteer next Thursday. What time should we show up?" And charities were like, "What am I going to do with these people?" but they were terrified because they believed that if they didn't engage these people and give them an incredible volunteer experience, they were going to miss out on a check
Right.
that was going to come, which we know, those of us know the check doesn't come. They want to volunteer for free. So some of them said, we have nothing for you to do. And the company said, we want somebody, they said, call Jody. So we got at the bargains group over 500 calls in 83 days. We stopped counting at 500. We didn't know what was going on. We found out there was these two conferences that people were at, and the great news was 499 of these companies wanted to give and do and group volunteer, and they had a budget. So we had to make a choice. Do we ramp up our charity because we knew it's the perfect solution across
Hmm.
Canada, but we recognize this is actually a global problem, not a Canadian, not a North American problem.
Hmm.
We've been fixing it for 2 decades, over 2 decades. So we were advised, do it as a social enterprise and go global. So we did. So we called it Kids for a Cause. I'm an entrepreneur, so we ripped off and replicated the best, which was my own charity. I didn't have
Right.
to ask for it, copied myself. And then the joke was I was online dating. So I also, copied the Match.com model, literally wrote it with my boyfriend on a napkin, figured out a website, called a friend who had a website. Can you put this up? And did it. And we literally started producing these events instantly. And our model was we're going to give away our knowledge, expertise, planning, consulting for free. And 100% of the budget is going to go towards the supplies that are going to make up the components of the kit.
Right.
But from a sustainability perspective, and you would identify with this, Teresa, my background knowing that most charities will never tell you this, 3/4 of the stuff they get donated as gift in kind.
Hmm.
It's either the right stuff at the wrong time,
Yeah.
which means they give it out to the staff because they have nowhere to store it, or it's the wrong stuff at the wrong time, which means they get frustrated because then they have to find volunteers to somehow get rid of it
Right.
and maybe take it to landfill. So we made sustainability from day one. One part of our processes of checking in real time every time we did an event. It's a lot more work, but
Hmm.
it's the right thing to do. And we basically manage the events from beginning to end. We get the charities to speak because we're really big on education. We make signage and educate the people. We do it all from end to end. And what companies tell us is we give them like a 5-star experience at a 1-star price. And then we started going to people and saying to charities, I think you may need our help. So the shoebox project, we standardized the shoebox project across Canada. Because if you go to a drugstore to buy $50 worth of product for a shoebox, you probably won't buy all the right items. And how
Hmm.
much are you going to get? Have you gone to the drugstore lately and looked at the prices?
Yes.
But the shoebox project said, we need your help because you'll give us $150 worth of product. And I forgot to mention, I have 7 warehouses filled with donations called the Full Circle Donation Program. And we donate a free product to every single kit pack that happens. So if you're doing a shoebox project for a women's shelter, we have Sephora donations. We'll put
Wow.
a Sephora item in. So we all are just kind of my philosophy is let's all get together and just make more impact. But kids are really, really important. And that's one thing that I want to mention. I have 5 kids, I have a
Hmm.
blended family, and some of them went to private school, some of them went to public school, but none of them did a good job about teaching about giving back.
Hmm.
And they had courses and they had Wee Club, they had all these things, but they didn't get it. So we started getting called before COVID for schools, and
Hmm.
we did Kits for a Cause in schools. And
Hmm.
the educators said, oh my God, that was unbelievable. Maybe they were doing a unit on Indigenous, and we picked an Indigenous charity. So we connected the education and what I call the active philanthropy in a
Hmm.
very affordable model. We said the kids can bring in 20 bucks each, or the school can sponsor it.
Hmm.
It worked beautifully. But then we got pushback by, let's just call it the largest school board in Canada, the TDSB. They wanted me to pay to put it in there. And I said, I'm not paying. I'm giving you a free service that's going to have massive impact. So the principals, the teachers are really upset about this because we've got the perfect program that
Right.
other schools are starting to put in. And then you and I started talking about hockey teams. We have hockey teams
Yes.
all the time coming to us. We're doing not a conference, a tournament, or we're having the Christmas party, or we're having the end of year celebration. When we're doing the pizza party or the get together, why don't we teach these kids who are so friggin' lucky
Hmm.
to have a 30-minute activity to actually pause? and do this activity and give back while we're doing all of this. And that's something that we've started to do in a big way. And it literally kind of just, one person tells another person, and you and I talked about let's get this into the big hockey leagues because they're all, whether it be hockey or soccer, organized sport, our kids are too busy, they're too programmed. And if we don't teach them philanthropy, or we don't allow our employees to do philanthropy during work hours because we're too busy,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. The statistics are everywhere how volunteerism is way down, but it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a problem right now that I see everywhere is around volunteerism. And certainly, I mean, the fact when you were talking before about taking the vans out with the kits that you put together and the fact that now people are trying to, out of need, trying to get in them, like that's a big change. There's been lots of changes over time, and
Yeah.
I think you're doing the best that you can to keep up with it.
Yeah,
So,
and the streets are not what they used to be. 27 years ago, yeah, there was substance on the street. It was a brown paper bag and a bottle of hooch,
hmm
then maybe some marijuana, but
hmm
not what we see now.
yes, absolutely.
And, the drugs and the impact and the fentanyl and everything. I unfortunately, have to have people one couple years ago, I had somebody try and knife me because they wanted a kit. A
Right.
kit.
Right.
So, I'm not going to stop. I recognize some of these people have some challenges. I just make sure that I have some very large, powerful men around me, to make sure that I'm secure because I don't want to ruin it for all the other people that I'm going to help. And the reason I do the outreach only with experienced outreach workers are because they are the experts. Please don't ever go out and just drop things off. It also allows them to have a connection with a client to build trust to maybe get them in. So it's not just about giving them the stuff, it's about having that connection for a social worker to be able to say, do you have a place to sleep? Can I help you? That kind of thing. You know,
Absolutely. And I think that's an important part of a lot of the work I do is if, ask the people who are in the middle of it what they need, and they're able to tell you. And it sounds like you've been able to do that through the whole process, including what's included in the kits. Um, I know that we've been chatting for a while. I wanted to think about you talked a lot about empathy, and I think that you're an ethical person. What does ethical leadership look like right now for you? How does that
me.
how,
Yeah. I love, reading all these, 2026 is the year of authenticity, right? And I go, wow, I guess I'm really ahead of the curve on that one. I always say to people, I haven't dropped the F-bomb once, so I've been really behaved for you, Teresa. Uh, but whether you see me on stage, whether you see me on a podcast, whether I'm talking to you as one-on-one or doing business, I'm the same person.
yeah,
And I think people are so, oh, that's my work voice, and that's my mother voice, and that's my hockey mother voice, and that's my,
yeah,
I'm one voice.
yeah,
And I think we need to understand that it's okay. Not everyone's going to like it, not everyone's going to resonate, but you can't screw up when you're just being you.
yeah,
And that's what I try and encourage people who work for me. Just be you. If you're having a really crappy day, hey, you're human. Share. Just tell us so that we know if you look or do something the wrong way, what's going on, and ask for help. Asking for help, I always say, smart people ask for help. And
right.
authenticity means sharing those messages because it's pretty much the opposite of what society has taught us, right? So I think
Absolutely.
that's really it. Like we all need to be real. We all need to recognize that we're all broken right now. The
Hmm.
world is a mess. And if you don't think it is, I don't know where you've been for the last several years, but it is an absolute mess. And we're all suffering in a different way.
Hmm.
So, I declared 2026 of, the year of gratitude and kindness.
Hmm.
Let's all just be a little bit more kind, and hopefully the compound effect of that is going to really help us all make our communities and our personal lives and everything better than they are right now. I mean, you can't go the opposite way when you're being kind. That's the good news.
That's right. I agree with that. And I think that's an important part. Well, that's why I liked you right away. I thought it was so hilarious when you grabbed the mic, and I thought, this is my kind of person right here.
Well, yeah,
Um,
you're real, I'm real, and
yeah,
unfortunately, we need more people just to be real.
yeah,
And go play Lego. That's real, right?
yeah. That's right. One last question. Okay, so I like to talk about how do you know how to follow through on the things that are important to you. So, do you have reflections or any advice for people who might feel a nudge to act? Maybe it's towards giving back, maybe it's towards finding a passion, but are unsure where to begin. How do you begin to follow those voices?
I mean, first of all, it's got to be simple.
Hmm.
Nobody has time and nobody wants to overcomplicate. So just think about something that's important to you, a cause, um, homelessness and unhoused is important to me, but so is mental health, so is many other things, could be cancer. It really doesn't matter what cause it is. There's not a cause right now that doesn't need help. And then think about like, what do you do in your day-to-day thing? What do you do that maybe you could do for an hour a week, an hour a month, and share that skill, that knowledge with someone who can benefit?
I think that's exactly right. And I'm so glad you're a disruptor. And I'm so glad that you have had the journey that you've had because you have impacted so many people, including me on a Tuesday night in at the Delta in Conference Center in Toronto. And I really am grateful for you being here and sharing your time with me today.
Well, thank you, Teresa. And I think it's also important that people like us hang out, collaborate. And, when you're doing a playhouse, a Play-Doh event, maybe we incorporate Kids for Cause and collective, like imagine when you get two people that are disruptors together, you know,
Absolutely.
the magnitude of the impact we could make. So, if anyone needs help with anything, please reach out. If anybody is helping any charity coast to coast, don't ever go to a retail store. Call me, get in touch with me. And if anybody wants to know more, just reach out. I'm one of those few people who will answer you. May not be in in the moment, but I definitely will answer you because I think it's really important. Being authentic means, answering an email, picking up a phone. If I say I'm going to do it, I got to do it, and that is just what real people do. So thank you for being interested in what I do and sharing the news on your podcast. I really appreciate you allowing me to be a guest here.
My pleasure. And I will share all of your contact information. And I am grateful and I can't wait to collaborate with you. Thank you.
You too. All right. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks. I have to tell you, I really enjoyed that conversation with Jody. And I think that for me, what I took away is that if you see something, you feel something, do something. And I'll leave the contact, how to find more about Jody's work, Bargains Group, Kits for a Cause, and she does speaking as well. So I'll leave that in the notes for the show. And the message, I think, is if you feel something, do something. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.